Orlando sucks. There, I said it. Okay, maybe not completely, but let's be honest, it's not for everyone. It's easy to find videos about why everyone loves living in Orlando, but what about the bad parts? I'm talking about the things that people hate most about Orlando. The kind of stuff that literally makes people sell their homes and move away. If you want to know the worst things about living in Orlando, then stay tuned because that is exactly what we're going to cover in this video. Hey, my name is Joey Guest and I'm a real estate agent right here in sunny Central Florida. Today, we're going to take an honest look at what people hate most about living in Orlando. And make sure you stick around till the end because I'm going to tell you a story about how my family was personally impacted by some of these things. As a native Floridian, Orlando was a great place to grow up for all the obvious reasons. Awesome weather, attractions. Essentially, we get to live where everybody else vacations. But over time, things changed and it just didn't feel the same. Over the years, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of people and building some great relationships. And I started to notice I wasn't the only one that felt this way. So when we decided to make this video, I wanted to make sure it just wasn't about my biases against Orlando. So I talked to other people who work, live, or even moved out of Orlando to find out about what they hate most. And surprisingly, I got a lot of common answers. So let's dive into the top 5 things that people hate about living in Orlando. Now, we did get several different answers that led us to number 5 on our list, like it's getting too busy, it's too crowded, the people are rude or unfriendly, it's starting to feel like a transient big city, and ultimately, these all came down to one common factor: rapidly growing population. So we checked some stats, and Orlando ranks as the number 4 largest city in the state of Florida, with just over 290,000 residents. That breaks down to 2,628 people per square mile and a growth rate of just over 21% over the last 10 years. To give a little more perspective, Orlando is part of Orange County, which is home to over 1.4 million residents. And Orange County as a whole has grown at a rate of over 23% over the past 10 years. So let's expand our view a little more and look at the entire 7-county region that makes up all of Central Florida. We see that an overwhelming 90% of the population growth was from in-migration. That translates to 1,100 new residents moving to Central Florida every week. Orlando is obviously an attractive place to live. One factor is obviously the weather. It's basically summer from like mid-March to mid-October. So t-shirt, flip-flops, and shorts you can pretty much wear year-round. If you're looking for a change of seasons, Florida may not be the place for you, but we're not here to talk about weather in this video. There's obviously lots to do in Orlando, with it being the number 1 tourist destination in the US, and add in the fact that Florida has no state income tax, and we remained open for business the majority of last year. It's a pretty attractive place to live. Now, all this growth is coming at a price, and we're seeing it reflected in our real estate market. Inventory is extremely low, and home prices are increasing at insane rates. As of July 2021, the number of homes sold in the Orlando MSA is up over 32% from last year for single-family homes, and almost 67% for townhomes and condos. On average, we're seeing maybe 1 to 1.5 months worth of inventory. So that means if no new homes come on the market, we'll be completely sold out within 1 to 1.5 months. And I know what you're thinking. Just rent for a while, wait till the market cools off. It sounds great in theory, but the rental market isn't much different right now. Inventory is extremely low, and most rents are higher than a typical mortgage payment on a comparable home. So why am I talking about real estate when you came here to find out what people hate most about Orlando? Because this leads us to the number 4 thing that people hate most about living in Orlando: the never-ending construction. There's also $3.1 billion in infrastructure construction projects already scheduled for 2022 in the city of Orlando alone. Now, there's a lot going on, and some of the biggest construction projects in Orlando include things like the Brightline high-speed train, which is now officially partnered with Virgin. They're adding a train station at Disney Springs and starting their 3rd phase of construction. This is going to come in at roughly $3 billion. Another big project going on is the Vertical Medical City Towers in downtown Orlando. This is like a $1.1 billion project. It's going to be some multifamily mixed with some medical. Vista Park, which is a new master plan community in between Lake Nona and Vista Lakes. This is coming in at $1 billion. The Orlando Fashion Square redevelopment project. which is going to feature over 1,500 like mid to high rise apartment units, 500,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space, probably another 200,000 of office space, and a hotel. The Rose Arts District redevelopment project, this is going to feature over 5,600 multifamily units. O-Town West development, which is going to feature like 400 luxury apartment units. And wait for it, the world's largest freestanding White Castle. Okay, so with over $8 billion in construction already scheduled in just these projects alone, I don't think the construction in Orlando is going to stop anytime soon. Okay, so let's move on to the number 3 thing that people hate most about living in Orlando, the crime. All right, so the crime in the city of Orlando has actually been on a steady downward trend, which is interesting. Despite the downward trend in crime, with Orlando still ranking higher than other Florida cities by roughly 95% for violent crime and 125% higher for property crime. Okay, so quick backstory on how my family was personally affected by crime in Orlando. At the time, my wife was working in a salon just south of downtown Orlando in an area that I'd still consider a good part of town. So it was her, another stylist, and a couple clients that were getting their hair done. Now it was later, it was probably after 9 p.m. and they had the door locked because it was after hours. But when one of the clients got up to leave, they couldn't get up and lock the door quick enough. So 3 guys rushed in with masks, robbed everybody at gunpoint. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but it was a pretty traumatic experience for my wife and her friends. Now I know bad things can happen anywhere, but after this event, Orlando just wasn't the same for us anymore. Which brings us to the number 2 thing on our list that people hate most about living in Orlando. It's touristy. I mean, to me, this one's kind of a no-brainer. It's obvious that Orlando is going to be touristy, seeing as how it does rank as the number 1 tourist destination in the US. So it can't be that bad of a place to live, right? Of course, there are lots of local spots that don't get the same type of tourist traffic, but the fact that Orlando gets visited by over 59 million people a year is a pretty good indicator that if you're going to live in Orlando, you're going to have to deal with crowds. And that number has actually gone down from previous years, which saw 72 million visitors. So when you combine the crazy amount of visitors we get every year with the rapidly growing population and the never-ending construction, you can't help but get bad traffic, which leads us to the number 1 thing that people hate about living in Orlando, the traffic. We looked at a recent study by Inrix.com, who does traffic analytics data, and they ranked Orlando as the number 74 most congested city in the United States. Another research company we looked at ranked Orlando at number 15 for the worst traffic in the US, and they found that Orlando residents have an average commute time of just under 37 minutes. Okay, so this was also number 1 on my personal list about what I hated most about living in Orlando. And I still remember the defining moment that traffic in Orlando changed our lives. I had just finished up some appointments in Lake Nona and I called my wife to let her know I was done and I'd see her and the kids in a little while. Now, normally this drive should take 15, maybe 20 minutes. I know it was a little bit after 5:30, so it was peak rush hour. But she calls me back like 45 minutes later and was like, "Hey, where are you? I thought you were coming home." And I was like, I'm just sitting in traffic. Now, at the time, the conversation probably wasn't so peaceful. Looking back, it's kind of funny, but I was expected home like 20 minutes ago. We've got a hungry kid, dinner's starting to get cold, and I'm still like 15 minutes away from the house. And I'll admit, I was pissed off because I hate traffic. I hate sitting in traffic. That's the number 1 thing that just gets me. I can't deal with it. Needless to say, I made it home that evening. We had a nice cold dinner as a family, but that was a defining moment in our future. And I'm going to tell you about that at another time. So now you've heard the worst things about Orlando. Of course, I'm sure there's some other things. And actually, if you have some things that you hate about Orlando, why don't you drop those in the comments and maybe we can go deeper and do a follow-up on those. Now, the good news is there are lots of other great places in Central Florida where you still have easy access to Orlando and everything it has to offer, but you don't necessarily have to live with these things on a daily basis. My family and many other families that we've been able to help were able to make moves that significantly improved our day-to-day lifestyles and quality of life without having to sacrifice easy access to Orlando. The reality is my business still brings me to Orlando on a weekly basis. My family and I are in Orlando all the time doing all kinds of fun stuff, but we're not stuck in the middle of all the hustle and bustle anymore. And it's been one of the best choices we've ever made. If you currently live in Orlando and you're tired of dealing with the traffic, the crime, the crowds, and you're ready to make a change, reach out and let us know. We talk to people every day that are buying or selling real estate in Central Florida, and we would love to connect with you. Our contact information is in the description down below. We'll see you next time.